Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, beginning with Collegium system ensures selection of competent judges. There is a report by Vidhi Center for Legal Policy. It surveyed 8 High Court advocates and they were asked about what is your perception regarding the Collegium system of judicial appointments. And over 68% of the advocates, they believe that this system ensures selection of competent judges. When I was reading this newspaper article, I was reminded of numerous comments by the aspirants on our videos wherein they wanted to know in detail how the judges in this country are appointed. So for those who have just joined us, today I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know regarding the Collegium system of judicial appointments. But for those who already know about this, they can skip to the next newspaper article. But for those who want to know in detail how judges are appointed in India, stay with me. I'm going to tell you everything related to judicial appointments. If you look at Article 124 of the Constitution of India, it talks about judicial appointments. Original Constitution as it stood on 26th January 1950. What it said, that judges to the high courts and the Supreme Courts, they will be appointed by the President of India. So judges to the high courts and Supreme Court shall be appointed by the President of India. But how? There is a process. And that process is what we call consultation process. What is this consultation process? Original Constitution said, when Chief Justice of India is to be appointed, the President shall consult such of the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court as he may deem necessary. That means when a Chief Justice of India is to be appointed, the President shall consult such of the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court as he may deem necessary. But when other judges to the Supreme Court and High Courts are to be appointed, the President shall consult Chief Justice of India. Also, when High Court judges are to be appointed, the President shall consult the governor of that state as well. This is what we called the consultation process. And this consultation process worked well in the first 2 decades of India's constitution. The convention was that a senior most judge of a Supreme Court shall be appointed as the Chief Justice of India, and whenever other judges to the Supreme Court, other judges to the High Courts are to be appointed, the President shall consult Chief Justice of India. This was the process that was to be followed forever. But then there was a controversy. Keshavananda Bharati judgment 1973. In this judgment, what the Supreme Court said, 13 judges of the Supreme Court said that there is a limitation on the powers of the Parliament. Yes, Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution, but Parliament cannot amend the basic structure of Indian Constitution. 7 judges of the Supreme Court propounded this doctrine called basic structure. That means 13 judges were hearing this case, Keshavananda Bharati. There was a single question that the Supreme Court had to answer. Is the power of the Parliament supreme that it can amend any provision of the Constitution? 7 judges said no. Yes, Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution, but no, it cannot amend the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Justice Sikri, who was the Chief Justice of India at that time, his tenure got over and a next Chief Justice of India was to be appointed. What President did? He violated this seniority principle. He appointed Justice Ray as the Chief Justice of India, despite the fact that Justice Ray was at serial number 4 in terms of seniority. There were 3 other judges who were senior to Justice Ray. Despite that, the President appointed Justice A.N. Ray as the Chief Justice of India. And these 3 judges who were senior to Justice Ray, they resigned in protest. Next came ADM Jabalpur case. This was the period when emergency was in operation. The question before the court was whether during emergency even habeas corpus should be suspended or not. The question before the 5 judges of the Supreme Court was that if there is an emergency in place, even during emergency, can the petitioner approach the Supreme Court if Article 21 is violated? Can the petitioner approach the Supreme Court and issue a writ of habeas corpus? 4 judges of the Supreme Court said no. Even during emergency, habeas corpus is suspended. A petitioner's right to approach the Supreme Court is suspended. There was only one judge who dissented, Justice Khanna. He was all set to be appointed as the Chief Justice of India. Why? Because he was the senior most judge of the Supreme Court. Instead, what happened? Justice Khanna was overlooked. Justice Beg was appointed as the Chief Justice of India. That means there was a strain in the 1970s. The convention that we were following, that the senior most judge of the Supreme Court should be appointed as the Chief Justice of India, this convention was violated when Justice Ray was appointed as the Chief Justice of India. This convention was violated when Justice Beg was appointed as the Chief Justice of India, overlooking the senior most judge of the Supreme Court, Justice Khanna, because Justice Khanna dissented in the ADM Jabalpur case. Then what happened? First judge's case. This is what we call SP Gupta versus Union of India. The year was 1981-1982. What was this case all about? The question was, is this word consultation that is mentioned in Article 124 of the Constitution, does that mean concurrence? And can the judges of a high court be transferred from one high court to another high court against their own will? What do we mean by consultation is equal to concurrence? Let's say, for example, Article 124 says the President shall consult Chief Justice of India when other judges of the High Court and the Supreme Court are to be appointed. Let's say, for example, President says a person A should be appointed to a High Court or the Supreme Court. Chief Justice of India says, okay. This means there is no tussle. Person A is appointed to a High Court or the Supreme Court. But what if Chief Justice of India says no? This person A should not be appointed to a High Court or Supreme Court. Does that mean the President is bound by whatever advice is given by the Chief Justice of India? If yes, then this consultation would mean concurrence. That means whatever advice is given by the Chief Justice of India, that is binding on the President of India. But if it is only consultation, that means even if Chief Justice of India says no, even then President can go ahead and appoint A as the judge of a High Court or a Supreme Court. In 1981, in SP Gupta versus Union of India, or first judge's case, Supreme Court says consultation does not mean concurrence. That means whatever advice is tendered by Chief Justice of India, that is not binding on the President of India. President can appoint anyone as the judge of a Supreme Court or a High Court, even if it is against the consultation provided by the Chief Justice of India. And at the same time, Supreme Court says a judge of a High Court can be transferred from one High Court to another High Court, even against his own will as well. This was the first judge's case, 1981. But this judgment was overturned in 1993. This is what we call the second judge's case, or SCARA versus Union of India. SCARA stands for Supreme Court's Advocates on Records Association. In this case, the Supreme Court said appointment of judges is a consultative. Not only consultative, it is also participative. Not only participative, but also integrative process to select the best possible talent to the judiciary. That is why you can't only consult Chief Justice of India, you have to consult plurality of judges. That means if the Constitution says consult Chief Justice of India, but Supreme Court says we are the final interpreters of the Constitution, you are consulting only Chief Justice of India? No. Consult plurality of judges. Consult Chief Justice of India plus two senior most judges of the Supreme Court. Why? Because appointment of judges is a consultative, participative and integrative process to select the best possible talent to the judiciary. And this Chief Justice of India plus two senior most judges of the Supreme Court, this is what we call a collegium. And it is this 1993 judgment which started the collegium system of judicial appointments. What Supreme Court said? Whatever advice is given by this collegium, that is binding on the president. That means basically what Supreme Court is saying? Supreme Court is saying consultation means concurrence. Whatever advice is given by Chief Justice of India and two senior most judges of the Supreme Court, this is what we call collegium. This advice is binding on the President of India. That means if the collegium says this person A should not be appointed as a judge, President cannot go ahead and appoint this individual as the judge of a Supreme Court or the High Court. In effect, it means consultation means concurrence. That means whatever verdict was given by the Supreme Court in 1981 in first judge's case, that was completely overturned by the Supreme Court in the second judge's case. So there was a conflict between what the Supreme Court said in 1981 and what the Supreme Court said in 1993. And what the president did, he used his power under Article 143. Under Article 143, Supreme Court is the advisor of the President of India. President can refer any matter to the Supreme Court, asking the views of the Supreme Court on that matter. And in this case, the matter was appointment of judges. This matter was referred to the Supreme Court by the President of India, and this is what we call presidential reference. President asked the Supreme Court, please tell us, how can we appoint judges to the Supreme Court? Because in 1981 you said something, in 1993 you said completely different. In this presidential reference of 1998, Supreme Court said the following. Supreme Court said, if a Chief Justice of India is to be appointed, this Chief Justice of India should be the senior most judge of a Supreme Court. Basically this. Let's say for example, right now, we have Justice Bobde as the Chief Justice of India. Who is going to be the next Chief Justice of India? The senior most judge of the Supreme Court. And the outgoing Chief Justice of India will nominate his successor. That means when the then Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, when he was set to retire, he nominated his successor. And he said Justice Bobde, who is the senior most judge of the Supreme Court, should be the next Chief Justice of India. And President has no other option but to appoint Justice Bobde as the Chief Justice of India. Second, Supreme Court said, if a judge to a Supreme Court is to be appointed, this judge to a Supreme Court should be appointed by the President of India, but after consulting Chief Justice of India and four senior most judges of the Supreme Court. That means the composition of this collegium now varies. Previously, Supreme Court said consult Chief Justice of India and two senior most judges of the Supreme Court. Now in 1998, Supreme Court is saying if a judge to a Supreme Court is to be appointed, the President shall consult Chief Justice of India and four senior most judges of the Supreme Court. If a judge to a High Court is to be appointed, the President shall consult Chief Justice of India and two senior most judges of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court further said, if a High Court judge is to be transferred from one High Court to another High Court, in that case, the President shall consult Chief Justice of India, four senior most judges of the Supreme Court, plus two Chief Justices of High Courts as well. Sending state, receiving state. Let's say, for example, a judge from Madras High Court is to be transferred from Madras High Court to Calcutta High Court. In that case, the President shall consult Chief Justice of India, 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court, as well as the Chief Justice of Madras High Court, as well as the Calcutta High Court. The Supreme Court further said, if this Collegium recommends a name to the President, this name shall be appointed as the judge. But what President can do, he can refer this name back. He can ask the Collegium, please reconsider this individual. Should he or should she be appointed or not, please reconsider. But if the same name is recommended again by the Collegium, President has no other option but to appoint this individual as the judge of a Supreme Court or High Court. The Supreme Court further said, what about these 5 judges? Let's say these 5 judges of a Collegium, they are discussing a name A. 4 judges are saying, yes, A is suitable to be appointed as a judge. His name should be recommended to the President. But Chief Justice of India says, no, I don't agree with this individual. This name should not be sent to the President for appointment. In that case, Chief Justice of India enjoys the veto. That means any name which is not agreeable, which is not acceptable to Chief Justice of India cannot be sent to President for appointment. That means in this entire appointment process, Chief Justice of India enjoys a virtual veto in judicial appointments. That means from 1950 till about 1993, executive had the sole power in judicial appointments. That means President was the sole authority to appoint the judges. Chief Justice of India was only consulted. But in 1993 and onwards, India has become perhaps the only country in the world where judges are appointed by themselves. This is what we call Collegium system of judicial appointments. In 2015, the Parliament enacted a law called NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Commission. This body was sought to replace the Collegium system. Parliament said, instead of Collegium system recommending names to the President, let's have NJAC recommending names to the President. And NJAC would consist of Chief Justice of India, 2 senior most judges of the Supreme Court, Law Minister, and 2 eminent persons. This NJAC should recommend names to the President who could be appointed as the judge of a Supreme Court or High Court. But then what Supreme Court said? Supreme Court said NJAC is unconstitutional. Why? 2 reasons were given by the Supreme Court. Number 1, Supreme Court said independence of judiciary is part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution, and NJAC violates independence of judiciary. That is why NJAC is unconstitutional. And second, primacy of Chief Justice of India in judicial appointments is also part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Because in Collegium system, if a name A is not acceptable to Chief Justice of India, this individual cannot be appointed as a judge. That means Chief Justice of India has a virtual veto in judicial appointments. And this virtual veto was snatched by NJAC. Supreme Court said this is not possible. Why? Because primacy of Chief Justice of India in judicial appointments is part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Since NJAC is snatching this primacy of Chief Justice of India, it is against the basic structure of Indian Constitution. That is why NJAC is unconstitutional. So this is what we call the Collegium system of judicial appointments. Now let's look at another news. NIV, National Institute of Virology, Pune. It has developed a test to detect antibodies. Now how? Let's say for example, there is an individual A. This individual A is to be tested whether he is COVID positive or not. So what we do? We take out sample. We take out, let's say, nasal swabs. And we perform a test what is called RT-PCR, Reverse Transcription Polymerase Chain Reaction Test. So what we do? We take a sample, nasal swab for example, and we test whether RNA of coronavirus is present in this swab or not. If the RNA of the coronavirus is present, this person A is COVID positive. That means he is suffering from COVID-19. But what if there is an individual X? This person X is suffering from COVID-19, but he doesn't know. Why? Because this person is asymptomatic. He is not having a sore throat. He is not having a runny nose. He is not suffering from high fever. He is not suffering from body cramps. In short, he is asymptomatic. He does not possess or display any symptoms of COVID-19. But this person X is like a live time bomb. In this process, since he does not know that he is suffering from COVID-19, he is also infecting hundreds of others as well. Over a period of time, this person X automatically is cured of COVID-19. Clear? That means even after 28 days or 30 days, if we test this individual X, what sort of test? RT-PCR. That means we will take out his nasal swab and we will see whether the RNA of the coronavirus is present or not. But since he is cured of COVID-19, he will come out COVID negative. But then if he is cured of COVID-19, which basically means he has developed antibodies, and these antibodies have fought against coronavirus, have fought against severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, which is the virus which causes COVID-19. That means this person has developed antibodies, and these antibodies have fought this coronavirus. For such individuals, National Institute of Virology Pune, it has developed a test which is an immunological assay called enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. Assay is basically a testing procedure. And this test, what it will do, it will detect these antibodies which the body has developed in response to the infection caused by this coronavirus. This ELISA test will be used to screen 30,000 samples from 75 hotspot districts, and this will tell us whether community transmission of COVID-19 has taken place or not. For your prelims examination, this is the first time India has developed an indigenous ELISA test for coronavirus. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at some of the editorials and columns from today's newspaper. The first one written by Rakesh Sood, who is a former diplomat. After the lockdown is over and the world will re-emerge, what are the trends that will shape the post-COVID-19 world? And Rakesh Sood talks about 6 geopolitical lines. Number 1, ascending Asia and waning United States of America. If we look at 2008, when there was a global financial crisis, when United States, European world powers, their economic situation plummeted. Even in 2008, India and China, they depicted resilience. Their economic situation was better than United States and other European powers. And at that point, many world countries, many world powers, they were referring to India and China as emerging economies. At that time, diplomat Shiv Shankar Menon, what he said it is wrong to call India and China as emerging economies. Refer to India and China as re-emerging economies. Because during the 18th century, Asia was contributing more than half of the global GDP. It was only because of Industrial Revolution, which started in Europe, and because of British colonialism that Asia's contribution to global GDP declined. So don't call India and China as emerging economies, call them re-emerging economies. And post-COVID-19, we will see that Asia will be on a rise and US will be waning, because it is the Asian countries which have reacted and responded to COVID-19 better than European countries and United States of America. Look at the situation in Italy, Spain, United Kingdom, United States of America, and contrast it with South Korea, Singapore, even India and Asian countries have performed better than the European countries. So, two geopolitical lines that will emerge post COVID-19 world. One, Asia will be on a rise and US will be declining. Third, there will be tension within the Europe. United Kingdom or Britain became the first country to pull out of European Union. That is what we call Brexit. Previously, Greece was also wanting to exit European Union. That is what we call Grexit. And there is no cohesion in their response to how we are going to respond to Russia and China. Some European countries, they want better relations with Russia and China. Others are still hostile to Russia and China because of post Second World War situation. When Second World War was over, world became bipolar. United Kingdom or Britain was no longer the world superpower. There were two superpowers, United States and USSR. After the dismemberment of the USSR in the 1990s, the world became unipolar. Only United States was the global superpower. Now we are seeing post COVID-19, the US influence will wane, China will emerge. There will be rising China. Not only rising China, within the Europe there will be fissures. And that is going to be the third geopolitical trend after COVID-19. And fourth one would be China will be on a rise. If you look at President of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, he is now the most powerful president of China, perhaps even powerful than Mao. And he is going to remain the president for his entire life, and he is going to lead China to the new world superpower. And in that situation, there are two important initiatives of China. Belt and Road Initiative. That means Silk Road, which will be from Xinjiang in China to Africa and then to Europe as well, and Maritime Silk Route as well. And it is through this Belt and Road Initiative that China wants to dominate the world militarily as well as economically as well. So the fourth geopolitical line or trend would be rising China. Fifth one would be organizations or these multilateral organizations, their influence will start waning. We have already witnessed how United States withdrew from Paris climate change. We have already witnessed how United States has been attacking World Health Organization because United States says that WHO is under the grip of China. We have already witnessed how United Nations Security Council is now toothless, how organizations such as G7, G20, G20 was created in 1999, but in 2008, its mandate was expanded. Its mandate was expanded so that this G20, a multilateral organization consisting of countries and European Union, this grouping G20 is going to play an important role against all sorts of threats that the world will face. But we have witnessed that despite the fact that today the world is facing the worst economic situation since the Great Depression of 1929, even then these organizations are toothless. So these organizations such as United Nations, World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, these Bretton Woods institutions such as World Bank, their influence will fade. And the sixth one, the energy factor. The crude oil prices, they have plummeted. And if you look at the West Asian countries, the Gulf countries, which have for long relied on crude oil for their economy, if there is a falling demand of crude oil, we are going to witness that there will be tense political situation in these West Asian countries because for long they have been solely dependent on oil for their revenues. And the world is more and more going to look for clean energy, going to look for renewable energy. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper column. Now there is another column, the epidemic and ensuring safety in courts. Even before the COVID-19, there were series of suggestions how we can reform judiciary. One suggestion was that the vacancies that we have in various high courts and supreme courts, these vacancies should be quickly filled. Second suggestion was that right now we have 10.5 judges per million population. The number of judges should increase. So we should have 50 judges per million population. There was another recommendation, another reform. We should use more and more technology in our judiciary. And that is why we should go more and more for electronic filing of cases. Right now, if we look at judiciary, Supreme Court, for example, we can also say that Supreme Court judges are also working from home. Only important cases are taken up, and these cases are taken up virtually. Bar Council of India has written a letter to Chief Justice of India, and they have opposed the virtual hearings once the lockdown is lifted. That means even after the lockdown is lifted, we should not continue with the virtual hearing of cases. Why? Because 90% of the advocates, according to Bar Council of India, they are not aware of technology and its various nuances. So once the lockdown is lifted, what should be the response of judiciary? Right now, it is true that there is less pressure on the courts. But once the lockdown is lifted, there is going to be more pressure on the courts. More and more cases will be filed in the courts. In that case, how should the judiciary respond? One suggestion is more and more e-filing of cases. Second, the writer says that there should be various guidelines that should be implemented. Guidelines, for example, not everyone should be allowed to enter the court premises. Only those cases, only those lawyers whose cases have been listed in the courts, only those lawyers should be allowed entry. Not everyone. That's number one. Number two, even if there are 100 lawyers, for example, whose cases are listed in the court, all of them together should not enter the court premises. They should be allowed entry in batches so that social distancing or physical distancing is maintained. Third, thermal image cameras should be installed at the entrance of every court building so that we can identify who are the risk persons, so that we can check their temperature, and those who are running fever, they should not be allowed entry. Fourth, only those who have Arogya Setu app installed on their smartphones, only they should be allowed entry, so that we can check whether these lawyers were in the vicinity of those who had COVID-19 or not. Only such individuals who are free from any sort of interaction with COVID-19 patient should be allowed entry into the court. Fifth, there should be a provision for sanitizers and hand washes. Sixth, canteens, for example, at these courts, they should follow the guidelines of social distancing. They should follow the guideline of safety and hygiene. 7, masks, gloves, and sanitizers should be made available. And importantly, junior lawyers who have been severely impacted because of the lockdown, their incomes have taken a hit. They should be provided financial assistance even in the form of loan from nationalized bank by the central government. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at another column, responding to COVID-19 at the grassroots. If you look at Mahatma Gandhi believed that India lives in the villages. If villages develop, the nation as a whole will also develop. But these villages should be self-sufficient. And how can we empower these villages? We should organize Gram Panchayats at every single village. That's the Gandhian principle. And that Gandhian principle is mentioned in Article 40 of the Constitution of India, which deals with directive principles of state policy. This DPSP says that the state shall organize panchayats at every village level and empower them with so much powers so as to enable them to function as units of rural, local self-government. But B.R. Ambedkar was against this idea. B.R. Ambedkar said, if Gram Panchayats are organized at every village level and they are empowered to become units of rural local self-government. But villages, they are the citadels of caste atrocities. So if these villages are empowered with powers, they are going to perpetuate caste atrocity in throughout the country. So he was against empowering these panchayats. But nevertheless, 73rd Amendment was brought into force in 1993, and this 73rd Amendment implemented Article 40 of the Constitution of India, set up panchayats or gram panchayats at every single village in this country. So a three-tier structure of rural government was enacted. A three-tier structure: panchayats at every village level, panchayats at intermediate level, and panchayats at the district level. This was the three-tier structure created by 73rd Amendment. But the apprehensions of B.R. Ambedkar were also taken into account. How? At all these three levels, there will be reservation for SCs and STs in proportion to their population. That means in proportion to their population, there shall be reservation of seats for SCs and STs. And there shall be reservation for women as well. Not less than 1/3 of the seats at all the three levels shall be reserved for women. But we have seen that there are still some problems. Problems? If you look at, there was Amazon Prime original series called Panchayat. It was a beautiful program on Amazon Prime. In this program, the village pradhan was a woman, but the functions of this village pradhan were performed by the husband of the woman. That is what we call pradhan pati or sarpanch pati. That means despite the fact that 1/3 of the seats are reserved for women, but we have seen the emergence of sarpanch patis or pradhan patis. That means although the law empowers the woman, but unfortunately it is the husband of the woman who is taking all these decisions. Not just that, the state governments and the politicians, they have not effectively transferred powers to these Panchayati Raj institutions. Not only that, in the year 2003, an expert group was set up. An expert group on Panchayati Raj institutions. It was argued that now we have completed 2 decades of Panchayati Raj institutions. Now please tell us how these Panchayati Raj institutions have fared. This expert group was headed by Mani Shankar Iyer, who was also previously the Minister for Panchayati Raj institution at the union level. Mani Shankar Iyer in his report said that in 1990s, we were spending 7,500 crores on poverty alleviation programs, on programs which were tackling poverty in India. And in 2003, we are spending 3 lakh crores on poverty alleviation programs, on various social security programs. But despite that, what was the position of India on United Nations Human Development Index? The position of India in 1990s is same as the position of India in 2003. This is what Mani Shankar Iyer called treadmill economics. What is treadmill economics? That means you are running on a treadmill, and after a few minutes or half an hour, the treadmill tells you that you have run 5 kilometers. But despite the fact that you're still at the same location, which means despite spending crores of rupees on poverty alleviation, our positions have not changed. This is what we call treadmill economics. And Mani Shankar Iyer says this is because we have not entrusted Panchayati Raj institutions in implementing these policies. These policies are implemented by the state government, by the central government. We have not still entrusted these Panchayati Raj institutions to implement these policies. But according to this author, Kerala and Karnataka are different. Why Kerala's model is to be emulated? It is because in these states, in Kerala specifically, the Panchayati Raj institutions have been empowered. There is Kudumbashri system in Kerala, which encourages women that what you can do, you can set up self-help groups. And through these self-help groups, they are empowering other women in Kerala. The writer says that 65% of all women who are elected to panchayats, they are these Kudumbashri members. That means this Kudumbashri system, it has become an incubator for women politics. And these Panchayati Raj institutions, they have been traditionally providing food, providing benefits to the needy, providing education to the poor and the marginalized sections of the society. And when traditionally Panchayati Raj institutions were at the forefront of public dealing, now because of COVID-19, their members, these Panchayati Raj institution members, they are at the forefront of Kerala's fight against COVID-19. Similarly, in Karnataka, when there is a lockdown, state government employees cannot come to various districts because these districts are under the lockdown. In such a situation, the members of these Panchayati Raj institutions were entrusted to ensure that no one is sleeping hungry, to ensure that food, cash is provided to the poor, to the marginalized. That means, in a sense, since state government officers, since state government employees cannot function right now because there is a lockdown, but even in a particular village, Panchayati Raj institutions, they have replaced these state government employees and they are at the forefront of the state's fight against COVID-19. But the writer says once the lockdown is over, in the post-COVID-19 world, we will have to watch out for one sign. What is that sign? Elections to these Panchayati Raj institutions are overdue. They have a tenure of 5 years. Many of these Panchayati Raj institutions will complete their tenure very soon. But since elections will not be possible, in that situation, we will have to wait and watch whether the state governments are extending the tenure of these Panchayati Raj institutions, or are they disbanding them and transferring their role to their own political workers. If they are continuing with Panchayati Raj institutions, we can safely say that these state governments are committed to democratic decentralization. Otherwise, they are not. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at the practice questions, first for the prelims and then for the mains. Question number 1. Which of the following are correct regarding Cabinet Secretariat? Number 1, Cabinet Secretariat is responsible for the administration of the Government of India Transaction of Business Rules 1961 and the Government of India Allocation of Business Rules 1961. Correct? Cabinet Secretariat ensures that the President, Vice President and Ministers are kept informed of the major activities of all ministers, departments by means of monthly summary of their activities. Very important statement, correct. Management of major crisis situations in the country and coordinating activities of various ministries in such a situation is also one of the functions of the Cabinet Secretariat. All these statements are correct. Why? What is the context of this question? On page number 1, it is mentioned that Cabinet Secretary chairs meeting with Chief Secretaries and the focus is on special trains. That is why there is a question on Cabinet Secretariat. Question number 2. Which of the following are correct regarding Todas? The Todas are tribal pastoral people who live exclusively in the Nilgiri Hills, correct? The first reference of them on a historical document is on a stone inscription dated AD 1117. This statement is also correct. You can find this inscription in the Nilgiri Hills, near the Nilgiri Hills. The Todas traditionally practice polygamy. No, they practice polyandry because of the shortage of women. So only 1 and 2 are correct. What is the context? Tying up with Todas to keep the virus at bay, traditional tribal artisans from Nilgiris are producing masks with exquisite embroidery. Question number 3. Which of the following country is not a part of OPEC Plus framework? US is not part of this framework. Question number 4. Which of the following is correct with respect to cash reserve ratio, CRR? CRR is the proportion of deposits that a bank has to park with the Reserve Bank of India in cash, correct? banks do not earn any interest for maintaining CRR with the RBI. Correct? Both these statements are correct. There was a demand specifically by the State Bank of India chairman way back in the year 2012, wherein the State Bank of India chairman, he said that this CRR is like a useless deposit with RBI because they cannot give out loans on the basis of CRR, and at the same time this CRR is lying idle with RBI. So RBI should provide us interest on this CRR. Question number 5, Prelims 2019 question. Which of the following are the reasons for the occurrence of multi-drug resistance in microbial pathogens in India? Number 1, genetic predisposition of some people. No, that's not the reason. The reason is taking incorrect doses of antibiotics to cure diseases. The reason is using antibiotics in livestock farming. There is also a fourth option, multiple chronic diseases in some people. This is also the reason for multi-drug resistance. So which of the following is the correct answer? D, 2, 3 and 4. Mains based question. Number 1, answer should be in less than 200 words. There is a strong case for nations to include health security as an important component in their national security doctrines. Question number 1. Question number 2. The appointment process of higher judges is a sacred ritual whose mystery is confined only to a handful of high priests, the judges. Comment. This is the statement given by former Chief Justice of India, Justice P.N. Bhagwati, wherein he was critical of Collegium system of judicial appointments. That is it for our newspaper analysis for today. Thank you for being with us. Have a great day.